Hi everyone, welcome back and happy Saturday. So we're going to jump right on into this. I received a follow-up email from this guy, this white man who initiated the conversation on the secret that white men don't want black men to know. You guys who have been following this series that we just started over the past week. So I thought that his final, or is it final, email that he just sent me was very comical, to say the least. So I'm going to read that email, but before we jump into that email, I am going to address this thing, right? So I received a separate email from someone else, and this is not the first occurrence where they're asking me to provide counseling services, right? Now, I get that you guys understand I am a psychologist, right? But I don't think you guys quite understand that I am not taking clients, especially from this platform here, right? Like, when I come to you guys and make videos and I respond to your email requests on various topics, I mean, this is just thoughtful discussion, right? This is just us engaging in, I think, fun, discussion topics that are relatable, not necessarily for me to recruit new clients, therapy clients. But I get it. Like, this is the real world. A lot of you guys are going through things, have been through things, and are still going through things that are unresolved, right? You have unresolved issues. And I guess somehow I am the leading source to be able to help you guys come to terms with those issues. Now listen, I don't mind. I actually enjoy doing these videos, right? I don't mind coming to you guys and doing my video responses to your emails and different topics that you guys bring up, especially even in the comment section or via Facebook inbox or my personal email. Like, I really do enjoy this, right? But I want you guys to just think for a second. Just think. Does it make sense, right? Does it make sense for you guys to engage in psychotherapy services with me? Like, does that make sense? And number one, first and foremost, like, I am not licensed yet. I will be licensed relatively soon, but even still, when I get licensed, like, I don't think I have any interest on taking on anyone through this platform as my psychotherapy patient. So the email that this person sent, he's like, Danielle, please help. I haven't seen my daughter. I'm being denied of seeing my daughter in over a year and a half now, and the judge is asking me to go to counseling. So I'm like, okay, I'm thinking, okay, this could be a good topic to discuss here on this platform, right? We can talk about it. Let's open up a discussion about this from varying perspectives. But I was curious to see, okay, where is this person from based on how he spelled, right? A word. He spelled counseling as he was saying counsel, right? Counsel, like a council member. I'm like, where is he from? I was curious, where are you from? So I asked that, and he says that he's from the States. I'm like, okay, where are you from originally, right? He's saying, okay, the States. And then he makes a retort to say, oh, I'm not one of those African guys that have been messaging you. And I'm like, okay, clearly he's white, right? I feel like that has some racial undertones to it. But that has no basis, because I'm like, what African guys? In fact, I would like for African men, varying people from varying different cultures, right, to engage, with me on social media, especially to initiate topic discussion, right? But in fact, the majority of those people who inbox me are white men, okay? So I found it to be what? African men who have been inboxing me, no, I haven't been receiving any inbox messages from any, what? But anyway, so I kind of dismissed that, and I said that I'm not taking any therapy clients, right? And then he's like, so why are you asking me where I'm located? And I say, well, just looking at how you spell counseling, right? He spells it like a council member, right? Ling. And I'm like, where is he from? Initially, I thought that he was like British because I know, in Britain they have a different variation of how they spell counseling, right? But it wasn't even remotely close. Anyway, he took offense to that and he was just like, LOL, fuck you. I wanted to say that's the reason why you can't see your child, but I'm not gonna be that facetious, right? He's already hurt. He's a hurt man. A lot of men I think that engage here on my platform are hurt men. They lack insight. They haven't taken the time to really reflect on themselves. They reflect on their ex-partners, but they don't really take time to look in the mirror at themselves. So when you guys take this risk, right, very bold, courageous risk to inbox me and share parts of your story with me, right, for a public discussion, even though you remain anonymous, I don't think you are quite aware, like the degree of analysis that I'm going to go into regarding your story and regarding you as a person. Those people, I said, lack insight and they haven't taken the time to do some deep self-reflection. So when you're met with me, my analysis, right, in my response videos, you're like taken aback. You're like, oh my God, some of you guys become offended. And I think it's not so much what I say. Yes, it could be, right? Because like I'm pretty straightforward and I cut straight to the chase in my analysis regarding your issue, right? I'm not biting my tongue. I don't really spare feelings necessarily. So it could be that, but I think it's more so the fact that you guys haven't done the work. Like you haven't really taken the time to look at yourself and ask yourself, first of all, who am I? And regarding your past relationship, failed relationship, like where did I go wrong, right? What did I do? A lot of y'all, it's clear that a lot of y'all really don't quite know who you are. So let's jump right in, because I get it. I see that your responses are like, oh my gosh, But if you had done the work, this is my point. If you had done the work, if you know who you are, it wouldn't be this wow factor. It wouldn't be like what I'm saying to you would not be new information because you already know this about yourself. So like I'm saying these things to you about you. And you should already know this. It should not come as a surprise. Right? But it's clear to see that those who don't. So anyway, he responds, on my birthday, September 28th, he says, Caharts is, and this is for you guys who have been following the series on the secret that white men don't want black men to know. And I did a part 2 to that, the secret that white men don't want black women to know. Just to give you guys a little backdrop, this person here, whose email I'm about to read, he essentially sent me an initial email. This was September 15th that it started, where he was just telling his story and how his white wife cheated on him with a man that she met at the gym, a black man, that they had begun having like sexual relations without his consent, right? He found out about this apparently, but without his consent, and essentially his wife left him, right? How he falls into this whole discussion on cuckolding is that he felt that he became a cuckold, not necessarily by mutual consent, but by default, and just being married to a woman who is cheating on him with a black man, essentially, especially to get her sexual needs met that he was not able to fulfill because he had sustained a pelvic injury, right? So he gave us that backdrop, and of course I gave my response, breaking it down in my analysis, which he actually understood, I don't think that for him the way it landed was necessarily, it wasn't like all peaches and cream, because it kind of struck a nerve, I think, within him. And then you guys will see here in this last email, presumably, I'm thinking this could be his last email, because he goes, Caharts is outdoor workwear. You should check it out. I already did. I mean, I checked it out already. I have no interest in that style of clothing. But anyway, he says, anyway, I'm embarrassed, so hopefully no more videos. Listen, I find it funny because you guys message me. I don't know who the hell you guys are, right? You guys come across my videos. You inbox me. You take time. It's really kind of taking time out of my day, because I do read like all of my emails, essentially, right, that I receive. Granted, I do receive a lot of spam, which I just usually delete. But emails like this that I know is related to like my YouTube vlog, I do read those emails, right? And so just going back to the last conversation with the guy who was like, LOL, fuck you, when I pointed out his misspelling of the word counseling, because I'm like, who is this guy? First of all, like, who are you, right? I feel like you guys are taking away time from what I could be doing. You know, granted, like I said, I enjoy doing this. So if you're going to message me, then just be willing to accept my perspective and understand this is my perspective. Considering the context in which I am addressing this from, I'm addressing it from an analytical perspective, right? Psychoanalytical perspective. So understand that, keep that in mind. If you don't want that, then go, right? But he's like, oh, no more videos. However, learned a lot from your perspectives. Did not really consider the perspective that my ex-wife was also a victim in a way of my issues, especially having recurring erectile dysfunction. She was deprived of something she needed, and I was only focused at the time on how it impacted me, so she drifted. Yeah, a lot of people are like that, especially men. Very self-centered and egotistical. And you think, I guess, it's really by no fault of their own, because historically, that's how our society has been built, right? Centered around what men want, and men taking the lead. Men having their needs met, right, at the expense of a woman. Like, it's, when you think about the role of what a woman was, let's say back in the 40s, right, in the 50s, like, it was catered and directed around the man. All right, the household, essentially, right, when children came into play, but it's like it's focused on how can she meet his needs, right? Cooking for him, cleaning for him, taking care of the children, like making the house a home. This is all like to support him, right? You think about her role. Her role can be compared to like a maid, essentially. Essentially, like, men had maids in the household that they call their wives. What about her? What about her needs? You know, who was ironing her clothes? Who was cooking for her? She did everything. But anyway, I think, you know, men who are stuck in that patriarchal kind of perspective, that mindset, they have difficulty seeing, like, oh, that's what she's supposed to do, right? She's supposed to cook for her man. Anyway, she was deprived. And I think it's important, because I pointed that out, how it wasn't so much, I mean, he painted himself as a victim, which he could have easily felt, right? Not to deny his experience and his reality from that relationship, but at the same time see what the other person may have been experiencing too. I think it takes a highly emotionally intelligent person to be able to do that, to see not only how you feel, but be able to see and understand, put yourself in someone else's shoes and understand how someone else could be feeling, right? That's pretty much the prime definition of emotional intelligence, EQ. Some people lack that, and you can tell, like, these people are emotionally, developmentally delayed. You know, they're not mature in their social emotional development. Something went wrong along the lines, right? that they only can, they're fixated in that stage where they only can see themselves and how they feel, right? And another person is beginning to express, you know, whether verbally or non-verbally, like their distress, and they just don't see it, right? She was deprived of something she needed, and I was only focused at the time on how it impacted me, so she drifted. My anger, right, because the relationships are that, are like relationships. It's a two-way street. It's not just about one person, right? So it behooves me, like, how can people be in a relationship that's supposed to be bi-directional, but they only can see it from their perspective, and then they somehow get upset when the other person, like, is slowly slipping away. Like, they haven't even thought, they haven't even had the level of insight to see, like, how is what I'm doing impacting this person? Like, where are they emotionally and psychologically? It just never comes across, right? It's almost like they're in that little childlike stage, right? When you think of children as they are developing, before they reach that stage of being able to see a perspective outside of their own, it's always about them. They're crying. Mommy could be in the kitchen, right, cooking tirelessly, right, trying to prepare meals for the family, but they don't see that. They're just like, give me, mine. It's all about me. Mom could be having her own emotional issues, her distress. They don't see that, right? So you have grown people, and in this case, men, right, who just don't see that in the woman. My anger is not at them so much as my own being inadequate to the task. The black female I'm seeing now is no rebound. But you brought that perspective in, like, to this conversation. You was like, oh, well, you know, or was it someone else? I think, yeah, it was someone else who actually commented on my video that this topic, right, this video series should not be titled The Secret That White Men Don't Want Black Men to Know. It's really about the secret that white men don't want black women to know. In essence, black women are being used as rebounds to these white men who have been hurt, who have been betrayed and abandoned by their preferred white female counterparts, essentially. He's saying his perspective. He said she had bad experiences dating black men who she said are immature, and I have had bad experiences with cheating white women who are too emotional. There you go. Too emotional, right? Like, you're lacking in that department. Is it that she's too emotional, or that you're not emotional at all? You lack empathy. So when a person is expressing their emotions, it's perceived by you, a person who is not in tune with their emotions, who is blind to their emotions and numb to their emotions, right? It's perceived by you as that person is being too emotional. No. We live in Missouri, but both live in other states as well. So basically, the thing to realize is that this secret that white men don't want black men to know, I guess, is also impacting black women. Okay? Yeah. Impact everyone who is involved. My hope either way is that it angers the anti-racial dating people. Fuck those stupid motherfuckers. So it's like that's how you get back, right? Initially, you had this fidelity to your race. I mean, for you to marry a white woman, I said this in my previous video, that is a conscious decision. It's actually a political decision that you make, considering the context, the political landscape that we are forever in, right? It's not, racism isn't going away. So for you to make a deliberate effort and decision to date a black woman, to date outside of your race, is like you're getting back, right? Not just at her, because she's probably gone on to live her life, I mean, apparently, but, really kind of like at your race or at society, who for a lot of people, race is very salient, and for them, race fidelity is very important, right? But I mean, you say you're in Missouri. Yeah, I guess it would make sense in that state, right? It would, like, you dating outside your race in a state like Missouri would be much of a bigger statement than you dating outside your race in New York. Is less of a statement here because, yo, this city is so culturally diverse, racially diverse, that, I mean, it's almost commonplace to see people mix, right? To see intermix racial dynamics in relationships. That's just a common thing here in New York City. You got Indians dating white people, and Indians dating blacks, and Chinese dating blacks, and white people dating blacks. And it's like, it's so much like mixing of the races, and not just like dating intimate relationships, but in business, right? And in just friendships, and just associates, and intermingling. That's nothing. This is not much of a bigger statement, and that would be made, I would say, than you doing that in your state of Missouri. Spanking got my attention because I am also into spanking, giving, not receiving. Now my eyes began to perk up as I read this last paragraph, and he's like, as the new girlfriend, we'll find out. Now this, I mean, I think it feels like something like arousing about this, right? Like what he's saying, it's kind of something arousing and exciting, that he's having these thoughts, right, of giving his now girlfriend, black girlfriend, a spanking, right? Let's continue reading. He said, maybe it's a way of compensating or overcompensating for being not as adequate in bed, but when she comes home from work, she will be told to get completely naked. Now, personally, you guys know, like I said, I identify myself as a submissive. Of course, I like spankings, right? I like being told what to do. So, like this, like hearing this is arousing for me, right? It's something that, yeah, I'm interested in, right? He said, bend over my knee and get a firm ass spanking that will leave a mark. She will politely ask for more. I feel like that was poetic, like him saying that. I think that was just like a little token, especially for him to say this is like the last email, like no more videos. I feel like that was like his alibi to me, and him saying that, considering that he knows that, I am a submissive who likes spankings. I feel like, I mean, it's good territory, I think, to explore. And then he signs off by saying, what she won't know is where that anger came from, and he leaves a half smile, or he leaves a smile and a wink, looks like, emoji. Ha ha ha! So, listen. So many different ways I could address this. First and foremost, cute, right? I like the idea. It sounds fun. Like I said, I think that he said that like as an alibi, and knowing that obviously that's something that I like, right? But if this story is true and you're dating a black woman and you're saying that, oh, what she won't know, right? You're like, oh, this is going to be a surprise to her. She will find out that you're going to, initiate these spankings with her. And you're going to kind of step out the norm, step outside the box of how you've previously been relating to her. That's a different dynamic, right? We have to understand, like, BDSM spankings and that dominance and submission dynamic, I think historically, when you think about it, historically it has been like interwoven in most heterosexual relationships, right? Kind of like goes without saying. It's like this unspoken dynamic that is just already evident in heterosexual relationships between men and women, right? So I think it could go without notice, like if you were to intentionally introduce these kinds of things, right, in the relationship. It depends. I think it's kind of nuanced, right, in how you do it, I think. And to what extent. The think about, because I'm speaking from my own personal experience and just my knowledge, right, understanding of this dynamic and this lifestyle, like it can be very tricky, right? I display this in my story, my BDSM autobiographical fiction story, Dying to Submit, right? Because it's one thing to introduce these gestures like very subtly, right? It's another thing to kind of just blatantly, like, you know, out of nowhere, she comes home, take off your clothes, right? Like that, I'm looking at like different directions that could go, how, you know, like what could become of that, right? And you're trying to do something new and something fun and exciting that pleasures you again, right? It's kind of going back to the tone of your first email where it was very you-centered and not considering her and what her experience was and what drove her to step outside of the marriage, you know. You don't want to end up back in that cycle, right? But yet at the same time, you want to do something fun. This something fun, I think, obviously is something that is going to benefit you because you came up with this idea. You know, this is your idea, right? The question is, how is this going to really impact her? Is this something that she's going to respond well to? I mean, you would only have the answer to that because I don't know who she is. Or is she going to be like, look at you, like, seriously? Seriously. I think interracial relationships are very interesting. That dynamic of a black woman with a white man, contextually, considering that, you know, in our society, you know, white men are kind of at the socioeconomic political totem pole, right? It is a statement, you know, for a black woman to date a white man and vice versa. And underneath that, like intrapsychically, I don't think there's much conversation or much, first and foremost, much insight, right? Much kind of introspection, you know, being done to see, okay, why am I being drawn to this? And then let alone past that for there to be like outward conversation and discussion about that, right? I'm not saying what is right or what is wrong. My whole point in all of my videos, you guys can see, is really about understanding thyself, right? And understanding, okay, what drew me to this dynamic? That's interesting. So perhaps you already have the foresight to maybe to gauge, to know, like, oh, she's gonna like this, right? And I'm gonna like this, clearly, right? It's a reason, you know, why she's drawn to you. I don't think black women, like, who are in those relationships, like in interracial relationships with white men, I don't think that they, not to say not all, but I don't think some are honest enough to admit that, you know. Like, yeah, like they are drawn to that dynamic of being with a white man who is perceivably a representation of power, political power, that is. I wouldn't say like true dominance in its natural form, but yes, you know, in this superimposed understanding of what power means, right, and represents in our society, then yes, you get powerful in that respect, right? I kind of consider that artificial dominance and artificial power, not like true, you know, power in its rarest true form. You even said, right, you know, that it's a overcompensation for not being as adequate in bed. So it's not that you were not, you know, that you were inadequate only with your ex-white wife, but it seems like you are admitting that you are inadequate even with this black woman. Huh. So, because your erectile dysfunction didn't like mysteriously go away. I find it interesting though that you aren't considering that I made those suggestions, or we explored the idea of you getting like interventions, right, and therapeutic support for your erectile dysfunction. But you didn't even address that. You're like, fuck that. You know, you kind of just accept it for what it is. Like, I have ED. You know, this is just what it is. We'll try to do other things outside of physical or penetration, right? Penetrable sex, like the spankings. But I have to warn you, like I said, I initially, gave my response on, yes, for me, it's arousing, right? It's fun, it's exciting, but at the same time, looking at, what could be the risks in trying these activities, right? You're exploring something, and I feel like you're kind of dancing on this tightrope, right? Not knowing, what can be the outcome, but you're just taking this risk. Like, what the hell? What is there to lose, I guess, right? If that doesn't work, if she's upset and pissed off, maybe you could just go to the next black woman, right? and obviously it's clear that a lot of white men do have a fantasy of just having sex with a black woman. It's nothing deeper than that, right? It's just the idea of being able to be with a black woman, to dominate her. I think it gives you a sense of power, and being able to, especially when you understand and you truly grasp, like, what is the black woman? What is she? Apart from the negative stereotypes, right, that have been implanted and ingrained in much of our psyches, right, through this conditioning in our society, of what race represents. When you truly understand and truly know, like, who is a black woman? Being the origins of humanity, being the beginning of humanity, right? Yeah, that can be a deliberate, bold statement for you as a white man to be with a black woman. Think about that. But yes, we have to take a step, right, to look at, like, this dynamic, because not everybody, I'm speaking because I know, not just from my own personal experience, but, like, I'm in this world, I'm in this dynamic of BDSM, right? And I've researched this, I've studied this, I've talked to a lot of people. A lot of people, this is not their fancy. Now, in a lot of vanilla relationships, that's your traditional relationship, right? You have, these aspects of BDSM that surface, right? Like spankings. Who hasn't been tapped on the ass, right? What woman hasn't kind of, been tapped on the ass by their male partner or whatever? But to the extent that you're saying, when we talk about, and I'm about to wrap this video, but when we talk about, like, other videos I've done, and especially related to cuckolding, right, and alternative sexual lifestyle activities, like, one of the questions that has come up is, how can I introduce this to my partner, right? Because, I think that's a valid question too, right? Like, you don't want to lose your partner if you have a really good, solid relationship. You said that she's not a rebound. This black woman that you're dating is not a rebound, but I'm questioning how solid is your foundation with her, right? But for those people who have asked that question cautiously, right, taking caution not to lose something valuable that they built with a very significant other, right? They want to try new things, so try alternative sexual activities such as cuckolding, right, with their partner, but they don't want to lose that person because that person is very valuable to them. I'm questioning how valuable is this black woman to you, right? So they'll ask a question to me, right? They'll pose a question, how can I have this conversation? How can I introduce this idea? And I think, like I said, that is a very valid question. It's very considerate, right? Because we're talking about something that, yes, could cost you your relationship. Could trigger a lot of problems as a result of you taking the wrong step. And it could take you down a path that you thought you wanted to go down, but turn out that you had no clue. You don't know what you're really getting yourself into, right? Thinking about those cuckold mistakes that have been made when people have, brought in a third person, and it's just like, oh my gosh, a baby came, that this was unexpected, it's not what we wanted, or some crazy shit happened where we can't get rid of this person, like it can take so many different turns. And in terms of what he just mentioned, right, I'm going to read this last paragraph once more and then share my thoughtful perspective on this, and we're about to wrap it up. He says, spanking got my attention because I am also into spanking, giving, not receiving. As the new girlfriend will find out. Maybe it's a way, find out, she doesn't know. Okay. Maybe it's a way of compensating or overcompensating for being not as adequate in bed. But when she comes home from work, she will be told to get completely naked, bend over my knee, and get a firm ass spanking that will leave a mark. She will politely ask for more. This is like so fantasy here. So I think that's the fun part about it, especially as a writer for myself, right? And a person who has lived fantasies, right? Like I've lived my own fantasies. I exist. My reality is like a fantasy. I exist in the fantasy world. I love fantasy, and what he's saying is clearly a fantasy, right? It sounds so romantic. It sounds like so mystical. Right? It's very far from what's real, right? Like I said, I don't know this woman, but just imagine what he's saying when she comes home. And it kind of raises so many questions, like when she comes home, like, why are you home before her, right? Maybe that's a different story, but like, what are you doing? All right, why are you home before she's getting home? But for her to come home and you just, out of nowhere, like, that doesn't make, like, think about that, right? Without even gauging where she is emotionally, psychologically, you're just gonna do this, right? Not doing an emotional check-in to see, how was her day? You see how that could, like, really cause friction? Right, if you truly act on this fantasy and this plan that you have in mind, right, one day, let me know how it goes, okay? But, I honestly think this is kind of, I still think this is a made-up story. Yes, I'm, like, a sucker for a really good, fun story, so that's why I'm entertaining it. But I don't think this is real. I just don't. And I can see how it can go many different ways, right? So let's say, you gauge the room, right? You read the room, she comes home, and you're like, oh, okay. She's in a good mood, let's say, right? Or she's in a neutral mood. And you do this. And, of course, she's like, this is something that is out of the blue. It's unexpected, right? It's just so random. And you say this to her as she walks in, she's gonna probably be confused. Like, what the hell? Right? But then part of her, because it's always like a split part of us, right? Yes, we are whole people, but intrapsychically, we have many different parts of ourselves, right? It's just not just one self. There are many different fragmented parts of who we are. And so there could be a part of her that be confused. What? She was walking in slowly. But then there's a part of her that's curious, and that could be craving that, and then that she could definitely feed into this fantasy and play along and do exactly what you say. But like I said, I think it just really depends, because a lot of people, they jump the gun in all different types of relationships, right? And they assume that, okay, this is going to be fun, so let's just do it. But it doesn't go as planned. Why? Because you don't really quite know what you're doing. It's like you're playing around, you're experimenting, but you don't know how BDSM works. For you to say something like that to her, to tell her to take off her clothes and get across your knee and give her, like, you have to have that authority. If you don't have that authority and you always been this submissive beta male, and yet that dynamic, and you're you come off as a beta male. Even in your email responses, you know, things that you share, you just give beta male vibes. And like, if anything, she's probably the more dominant one telling you what to do. And maybe you want to switch, you know, switch roles in that, just out of nowhere spontaneously, and see what happens, right? This is fun. This is exciting. But I don't see it landing well. You know, if you are more dominant, if you were more dominant and alpha, then yeah, you can easily do that. And in those situations where you have men who are truly alpha and truly dominant, it's an energy, like I said. Women will respond to that. And then it kind of goes down this rabbit hole where, before you know it, yes, it could turn very ugly. Okay, it could turn very ugly. I'm about to wrap this video up, but I was in a relationship. Most of you guys know my last relationship was from 2014 to 2017. It was with a guy I met in New York City, Jamaican guy. And he's very dominant, alpha. That's obviously what I'm attracted to. I had shared with him, you know, my story. Both of my stories, actually. My autobiography, American Dreamer, and my autobiographical fictional story, Dying to Submit. Right? So he knew about that. He knew, like, what tickled my fancy. Right? He just knew, like, the very intimate, intricate parts of my inner self, right, and what I craved, and he knew how to reach those parts, right. I wouldn't say he was quite a master, right, because for a person to be a master at that level, you first have to be able to master yourself, right, and he didn't have that level of discipline, I think, to master himself. He was alpha. I would say he was dominant. I wouldn't say quite alpha, because to be alpha is in relation to other men, right, like in the pack, right, to be like the top dog in, you know, essentially society, when you think about it. And I wouldn't say he was that. He wasn't that high up on the totem pole necessarily by comparison to other men in our society, but he definitely had dominant energy. And yeah, the way it unfolded, like, progressively through our relationship, even though, yes, I crave this type of dynamic, right, and I like spankings, and I told him this is what I like, and he played into that, like, because that's what he liked too, as a dominant man. It got to a point, yeah, it gets out of hand, because it's tricky. There's a fine line, I think, between dominance and, you know, those discipline spankings and abuse, right? And we're talking about a power exchange that is very delicate. This power exchange is a gift, right? And it's very delicate. And if not handled properly with care, everything can just come crumbling down. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up. But thank you guys for watching. And thank you guys for engaging. Thank you guys for submitting these interesting emails. And feel free to respond if you're watching this. I'm sure you probably are. Feel free to respond. If not, you know, it was great topic for discussion. I encourage you guys, feel free to use my email to initiate, you know, these topic discussions. You can use my website, the contact page on my website at danielleleach.com. My website is in all of the description box of all of my videos, so it's not really hard to find. But I'll catch you guys later. This was fun. Like, I feel like there's always something more to say, but maybe we'll save it for next time. Catch you guys later.